Maya Chin walked through the automatic doors of Jefferson High School, her worn military-issue backpack slung over one shoulder. The familiar sounds of teenage chatter, locker slams, and sneakers squeaking on polished floors filled her ears. It should have been normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. 3 months ago, Maya had been crawling through the mud on Kepler 442b, watching plasma bolts sear the air above her head. Now she was supposed to care about pop quizzes and cafeteria drama. The transition felt impossible. She made her way to her locker, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her. Most students didn't know where she'd been for the past 2 years. The official story was that she'd been in a special exchange program. The truth was classified at levels that made most government officials nervous. Maya had been one of only 12 humans selected for the Galactic Defense Initiative's Youth Integration Program. At 16, she'd left Earth to fight alongside alien species against the Void Swarm, a parasitic race that consumed entire star systems. She'd seen things that would break most adults. She'd done things that haunted her dreams. Maya. Sarah Williams bounced up to her locker with the kind of energy that Maya remembered having before she'd learned what it meant to watch friends die in vacuum. Sarah had been her best friend before she left, though Maya wondered if they had anything in common anymore. "Hey, Sarah." Maya forced a smile as she spun her combination lock. The numbers came automatically, muscle memory taking over. Some things hadn't changed. "Oh my God, you look so different. Did you grow like 3 inches? And you're so? I don't know, you look older. More serious." Sarah chattered while examining Maya's face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. "Where exactly were you again? Your parents were super vague about the whole exchange program thing." Maya had rehearsed this conversation 100 times during debriefing. Switzerland. Mountain boarding school. Lots of outdoor activities. The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. How could she explain that she'd spent 2 years learning to pilot a mech suit through asteroid fields while dodging energy weapons that could level city blocks? Switzerland? That explains the tan, I guess. But you seem so different. More confident? Like, you walk differently now. Maya closed her locker and shouldered her backpack. 2 years of carrying 60 pounds of military equipment had changed how she moved. She was lighter on her feet, more aware of her surroundings. Even now, she automatically cataloged exit routes and potential threats. The habit was hard to break. "People change," Maya said simply. "What's first period again?" "AP Biology with Martinez. Same as before you left." "Come on, I'll walk with you." Sarah fell into step beside her, still studying Maya with curious eyes. "You know, Tommy Reeves has been asking about you since word got out you were coming back. I think he's planning to ask you to homecoming." Maya almost laughed. Tommy Reeves had been her crush before she left Earth. Now, after everything she'd experienced, the idea of high school romance seemed impossibly naive. She'd held the hand of her squadron leader, Zix Tar, as the alien warrior died from swarm toxins. She'd made tactical decisions that saved or doomed entire colonies. Dating felt like playing house. They entered the biology classroom, and Maya immediately felt the weight of 25 pairs of eyes on her. She'd gotten used to attention during the war, but this felt different. There were no life or death stakes here, just teenage curiosity and social hierarchies that seemed painfully trivial. Ms. Martinez looked up from her desk with a warm smile. "Maya, welcome back. We're just starting our unit on genetics." Perfect timing. Maya took an empty seat near the back, her combat-trained instincts preferring to keep her back to the wall with a clear view of the room. Sarah sat beside her, whispering updates about which couples had broken up and who was dating whom now. As Ms. Martinez began discussing DNA replication, Maya's mind wandered. She remembered the Zeridian scientist who'd taught her about genetic engineering during her time with the Defense Initiative. The alien had shown her how the Void Swarm altered their own genetic code to adapt to any environment within minutes. It made Earth's understanding of genetics look primitive. "Maya," Ms. Martinez's voice cut through her thoughts. "Can you tell us what happens during the S phase of mitosis?" Maya blinked, refocusing on the present. The answer came easily, though she had to simplify it to match what a high school student would know. "DNA synthesis. The cell duplicates its genetic material." "Excellent. I see your time abroad didn't affect your academic preparation." If only she knew. Maya had spent months learning alien biology, studying the genetic weaknesses of dozens of species. She could identify a void swarm infection at the cellular level and knew 17 different ways to disrupt their reproductive cycle. High school biology felt like finger painting after creating masterpieces. The class continued, and Maya found herself fighting boredom for the first time in 2 years. Every minute on Kepler 442b had mattered. Every decision could mean the difference between a successful mission and catastrophic failure. Here, the biggest concern seemed to be whether they'd have a pop quiz on Friday. When the bell rang, Maya gathered her things slowly, letting the other students file out first. She'd learned patience in the military, learned to observe before acting. As she stood, she noticed Sarah watching her with a puzzled expression. "You okay? You seemed kind of distant during class." Maya slung her backpack over her shoulder, the weight negligible compared to what she was used to carrying. "Just adjusting. It's been a while since I sat in a classroom." They walked into the hallway together, navigating through crowds of students rushing to their next classes. Maya moved through them with fluid efficiency, her enhanced reflexes and spatial awareness allowing her to slip through gaps that others didn't even see. Sarah struggled to keep up. "Seriously, what kind of outdoor program was this? You move like a ninja now." Before Maya could answer, a commotion erupted near the lockers ahead of them. Jake Morrison, a thick-necked football player, had cornered a thin kid with glasses. Maya recognized the scene immediately, even though the context was completely different from anything she'd experienced in space. "Come on, nerd. Hand over your lunch money, or I'll stuff you in a locker again." The smaller student, David Kim, pressed back against the lockers with fear in his eyes. Other students watched, but didn't intervene. Maya felt something cold and familiar settle in her stomach. She'd seen bullies before, though they usually carried plasma rifles and commanded swarm attack ships. Without thinking, Maya stepped forward. Her movement was fluid, controlled, and carried the quiet confidence of someone who'd faced down alien warlords. "Leave him alone." Jake turned toward her with a sneer. "Oh look, it's the exchange student. Why don't you mind your own business before you get hurt?" Maya looked at him calmly, seeing not a threatening high school bully, but a target assessment. Jake was bigger than her by at least 60 pounds, but he moved like someone who'd never faced real danger. His stance was wrong, his balance poor. She could have him on the ground in 3 different ways before he knew what happened. "I said leave him alone." Her voice carried an edge that made several nearby students step back involuntarily. Jake apparently didn't recognize the warning signs. He took a step toward Maya, raising his fist in what he probably thought was an intimidating gesture. "You want to make something of it, freak?" Maya's response was almost automatic. 2 years of combat training kicked in before her rational mind could stop it. She stepped inside his guard, deflected his clumsy swing, and applied a joint lock that sent Jake to his knees with a yelp of pain and surprise. The hallway went dead silent. Maya looked down at Jake, who was staring at her with shock and dawning fear. For a moment, she felt the old satisfaction of neutralizing a threat. Then, reality crashed back. This wasn't a battlefield. Jake wasn't a void swarm soldier. He was just a stupid teenager who picked on smaller kids. She released him and stepped back, immediately realizing her mistake. Jake scrambled to his feet, his face red with embarrassment and anger. "You're dead, freak. Nobody does that to me." But even as he spoke, Maya could see the uncertainty in his eyes. He'd felt her strength, seen her speed. Some primitive part of his brain was warning him that she was dangerous in ways he couldn't understand. Maya turned to David Kim, who was staring at her with wide eyes behind his glasses. "You okay?" He nodded mutely. She looked around at the circle of students who'd gathered to watch. Their expressions ranged from shock to excitement to fear. Word of this would spread through the school within the hour. Her hope of blending in had just evaporated. Sarah grabbed her arm. "Maya, what the hell was that? Where did you learn to fight like that?" Maya didn't answer. She couldn't. How could she explain that she'd learned to fight by watching her alien mentors take apart swarm warriors with their bare hands? That she'd trained in gravity fields twice Earth normal while wearing full combat armor? That she'd killed her first enemy before her 17th birthday? The crowd began to disperse as teachers appeared to investigate the commotion. Maya walked away quickly, leaving Sarah calling after her. She needed space to think, to figure out how to navigate this new battlefield. Because that's what high school had become for her, another battlefield. The enemies were different, the weapons were social instead of energy-based, but the strategic challenges were just as real. And, unlike the Void Swarm, these opponents didn't follow any rules of engagement she understood. Maya found herself in the school courtyard, sitting alone on a concrete bench under a tree. Students passed by in small groups, some pointing at her and whispering. Word was spreading fast. By tomorrow, everyone would know that the quiet exchange student had taken down Jake Morrison without breaking a sweat. She pulled out her phone and stared at the screen for a long moment. Buried in her contacts was a number she wasn't supposed to have, a direct line to her former commanding officer, General Vance. She could call him, explain that the integration wasn't working, request immediate extraction. Return to a world that made sense, where enemies were clearly defined and victory meant survival. But that would mean admitting failure. And Maya Chun had never failed a mission in her life. She put the phone away and stood up, squaring her shoulders. If high school wanted to be a battlefield, then she'd treat it like one. She'd adapt, overcome, and complete her objective, graduate, and move on to whatever came next. The afternoon sun felt warm on her face as she walked back toward the building. Students continued to stare and whisper, but Maya ignored them. She'd faced down a swarm queen on the moons of Jupiter. A few curious teenagers weren't going to break her. But as she reached the doors, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that her real challenges were just beginning. The Void Swarm had been predictable in their brutality. High school politics, she was beginning to suspect, might be far more complicated. The bell rang, signaling the next period. Maya took a deep breath and stepped back into the battlefield, wondering what other surprises Jefferson High School had waiting for her. BY third period, Maya's takedown of Jake Morrison had become legend. Each retelling added new details, transforming a simple defensive move into something between martial arts mastery and superhuman strength. Maya heard whispers that she'd thrown him across the hallway, that she'd used some kind of secret pressure point technique, that she'd learned deadly combat skills in Swiss mountain monasteries. She sat in advanced physics, trying to focus on Mr. Peterson's lecture about electromagnetic fields while students snuck glances at her. The irony wasn't lost on her that the lesson covered basic principles she'd used to operate alien technology that could bend space-time. The electromagnetic force is one of the 4 fundamental forces of nature, Mr. Peterson explained, writing equations on the whiteboard. It governs everything from the smallest atomic interactions to the largest cosmic phenomena. Maya remembered standing on the bridge of a Zeridian dreadnought, watching their weapons manipulate electromagnetic fields to create miniature black holes. Earth science barely scratched the surface of what was possible with proper understanding of universal forces. Her phone buzzed silently in her pocket. She glanced at the screen under her desk and froze. The message was from an encrypted number she recognized immediately. Package delivery after school. Usual spot. V. General Vance. Maya deleted the message immediately, her mind racing. Contact from her former commanding officer could mean several things, none of them good. Either her cover was blown, there was a new threat that required her expertise, or her integration was being evaluated for termination. The rest of physics passed in a blur. Maya found herself analyzing every possible reason for the contact, while automatically taking notes on concepts she'd mastered years ahead of Earth's understanding. When the bell rang, she was the first one out the door. Lunch period brought new challenges. The cafeteria buzzed with energy as students discussed the morning's excitement. Maya grabbed a tray and moved through the line, hyper-aware of the attention focused on her. She'd eaten military rations on alien worlds, survived on emergency nutrients during extended missions. School cafeteria food should have been a luxury. Instead, it tasted like cardboard. Nothing compared to the carefully balanced nutrition supplements designed by galactic defense scientists. Even the pizza looked wrong, lacking the protein density and mineral supplements her body had grown accustomed to. Maya found an empty table near the windows and sat alone, preferring the tactical advantage of being able to see the entire room. She'd barely taken her first bite when Sarah approached with 3 other girls Maya vaguely remembered from before her deployment. "Mind if we sit?" Sarah asked, though they were already pulling out chairs. "Free country," Maya replied, continuing to scan the cafeteria. Old habits died hard. "So," said Jessica Martinez, leaning forward with undisguised curiosity. "That thing with Jake this morning was insane. Where exactly did you learn to fight like that?" Maya had prepared for this question during her debriefing sessions. Self-defense classes. The school in Switzerland had a comprehensive physical education program. "Must have been some program," said Emily Chun, no relation despite the shared surname. "Jake's been terrorizing freshmen for 3 years. Nobody's ever stood up to him like that." "Someone should have," Maya said simply. She remembered her first week of basic training, watching alien cadets half her size take down opponents twice their mass through superior technique and tactical thinking. Size meant nothing when you understood leverage, pressure points, and situational awareness. The conversation continued, but Maya's attention was divided. She noticed David Kim sitting alone 2 tables away, still looking shaken from the morning's encounter. A A group of football players occupied a corner table, Jake Morrison among them, his arm in a makeshift sling that seemed more for dramatic effect than medical necessity. More importantly, Maya spotted two adults she didn't recognize sitting near the faculty table. They wore casual clothes, but something about their posture and the way they surveyed the room screamed military intelligence. Her integration oversight team had arrived. "Excuse me," Maya said, standing abruptly. "I need some fresh air." She left the cafeteria quickly, ignoring Sarah's confused calls behind her. The hallways were mostly empty during lunch period, which gave her space to think. The presence of oversight agents meant her morning's display hadn't gone unnoticed by the people who mattered. They were evaluating her performance, determining if she could maintain her cover. Maya made her way to the school library, a quiet space where she could observe without being observed. She settled at a computer terminal and pretended to research while actually using the reflection in the screen to monitor the entrance. 15 minutes later, her patience was rewarded. The two agents entered the library, moving with the careful casualness of people trying not to appear threatening. They approached the librarian's desk and had a brief, quiet conversation. Maya couldn't hear the words, but their body language told her they were asking about her. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly librarian, pointed toward the computer section. The agents thanked her and began moving in Maya's direction, splitting up to approach from different angles. Basic containment protocol. Maya closed her browser and stood, moving toward the fiction section in the back of the library. She needed to avoid direct contact until she could assess their intentions. The agents followed at a distance, maintaining visual contact while trying to appear casual. She was reaching for a random book when a voice spoke behind her. Interesting choice. Science fiction, post-apocalyptic survival. Appropriate, given your background. Maya turned slowly. The female agent was mid-30s, athletic build, with the kind of alert eyes that missed nothing. Her partner, a tall man with graying temples, had positioned himself near the library entrance. "I think you have me confused with someone else," Maya said quietly. The woman smiled. "Lieutenant Shun, my name is Agent Rodriguez, Defense Intelligence. We need to talk." Maya felt the familiar weight of military protocol settling over her. These weren't school administrators or local law enforcement. These were her people, which meant this conversation would determine her immediate future. "I'm not Lieutenant anything anymore," Maya replied. "I'm just a high school student." "That depends entirely on your performance evaluation," Rodriguez said. "Your display this morning raised some concerns. Shall we discuss this somewhere more private?" Maya glanced around the library. Several students were studying at nearby tables, well within earshot. A public conversation would require careful word choice, but it would also limit how much pressure the agents could apply. "I'm comfortable here," Maya said. Rodriguez nodded, recognizing the tactical choice. "Very well. Your integration parameters specifically emphasized maintaining a low profile. Taking down a student in front of witnesses falls somewhat outside those guidelines." "A civilian was being threatened," Maya said. "My training included protecting noncombatants. Your training also included adapting to local conditions and social structures. High school bullying, while unpleasant, rarely constitutes a tactical threat requiring military intervention." Maya felt heat rising in her chest. "So I should have let him hurt that kid." "You should have found a solution that didn't expose your capabilities," Rodriguez said patiently. "Calling a teacher, creating a distraction, verbally defusing the situation. You have diplomatic training, Lieutenant. Use it." The title stung because it was accurate. Maya had held the rank of lieutenant in the Galactic Defense Initiative, commanding a mixed-species squad in some of the most dangerous combat zones in the galaxy. But that life was supposed to be over now. "My orders are to complete high school and prepare for civilian life," Maya said. "I'm following those orders." "Your orders are to integrate successfully without compromising operational security," Rodriguez corrected. "This morning's incident has already generated significant attention. Social media posts, text messages between students, even a brief video clip that we've had to suppress. That level of exposure puts your mission at risk." Maya absorbed this information. She'd underestimated how quickly information spread in the digital age. During her deployment, communication was strictly controlled through military channels. Civilian networks operated by completely different rules. "Understood," Maya said. "It won't happen again. See that it doesn't." Rodriguez handed her a small card that looked like a library bookmark. "Your oversight contact information. Use it if you encounter situations you can't handle through normal civilian channels." The agent turned to leave, then paused. "Lieutenant, Your protective instincts are admirable. They're also what made you an exceptional soldier. But, right now, your mission is to be an unremarkable teenager. Consider that a different kind of challenge. Rodriguez walked away, her partner falling into step beside her. Maya watched them leave, then looked down at the card in her hand. It appeared to be a normal bookmark advertising a local bookstore, but she could see the micro-text along the edge that contained encrypted contact information. Maya slipped the card into her pocket and returned to the computer terminal. She needed to understand the battlefield better, starting with social media monitoring. If her actions were being discussed online, she needed to know what people were saying. A quick search revealed several posts about the morning's incident. The details varied wildly, but the common thread was clear. The new girl had taken down Jake Morrison with some kind of advanced fighting technique. Comments ranged from admiration to speculation about her background. One post caught her attention. David Kim had written a simple message thanking an anonymous defender for standing up to bullying. The post had received dozens of supportive comments, mostly from students sharing their own experiences with Jake's intimidation. Maya stared at the screen, processing this new information. Her intervention hadn't just stopped one incident. It had apparently encouraged others to speak out about a pattern of behavior. From a strategic standpoint, she'd eliminated a persistent threat to civilian morale. But, from an integration standpoint, she'd violated her primary directive, remain unnoticed. The lunch bell rang, jarring her from her thoughts. Maya closed the browser and gathered her things, preparing to face the afternoon with new understanding of her situation. She was walking a tightrope between her training and her mission parameters, between who she'd been and who she was supposed to become. As she entered the hallway, Maya noticed the change immediately. Students moved aside as she passed, some with respect, others with wariness. A few nodded or smiled, particularly the younger students who'd likely been targets of Jake's bullying. Others whispered and pointed. She'd become a person of interest, which was exactly what she'd been ordered to avoid. Maya made her way to her next class, already formulating strategies to reduce her profile. She could play up the shy exchange student angle, avoid confrontations, blend into the background. It would require constant vigilance and careful social navigation, but it was achievable. What concerned her more was the realization that part of her didn't want to blend in. For 2 years, she'd been valued for her skills, her judgment, her ability to make difficult decisions under pressure. Now she was being asked to pretend those qualities didn't exist. As she took her seat in American history, Maya wondered if successful integration meant becoming someone entirely different, or if there was a way to honor both versions of herself. The question felt more complex than any tactical problem she'd faced in space. Mr. Williams began discussing World War II, and Maya found herself comparing his simplified historical narrative to the galactic conflicts she'd witnessed firsthand. The patterns were similar: resources, territory, ideology driving civilizations into conflict. But the scale was so much smaller, the stakes limited to a single planet. She took notes automatically while her mind worked through integration strategies. By the time class ended, Maya had developed a preliminary plan for reducing her social profile while maintaining her personal principles. It would require careful execution, but she'd run more complex operations with higher stakes. The challenge would be implementing her plan while dealing with whatever surprise General Vance had planned for their after-school meeting. Maya suspected her day was about to get significantly more complicated. The final bell of the day couldn't come soon enough. Maya packed her books with mechanical precision, her mind focused on the upcoming meeting with General Vance. The usual spot meant the abandoned parking lot behind the old Sears store, 3 blocks from school. It was where she'd been debriefed after her return to Earth, a location chosen for its lack of surveillance cameras and foot traffic. As students flooded toward the exits, Maya noticed Jake Morrison approaching with 2 of his friends flanking him. She immediately assessed the tactical situation: 3 opponents, confined space, multiple civilian witnesses. Her hand moved instinctively toward her hip, where her sidearm would have been during deployment, before she remembered where she was. "We need to talk," Jake said, his voice carrying forced bravado. The makeshift sling was gone, but Maya could see the careful way he held his shoulder. "No, we don't," Maya replied, continuing to pack her books. She kept her movements calm and controlled, knowing that any sign of aggression would escalate the situation. "You embarrassed me in front of the whole school," Jake continued, stepping closer. "Nobody does that to me." Maya looked up at him, really looked. Beneath the bluster and teenage posturing, she saw something that surprised her: genuine confusion. Jake Morrison was a simple creature who understood the world through physical dominance. Her easy defeat of him had shattered his understanding of how things worked. "You embarrassed yourself," Maya said quietly. "I just stopped you from hurting someone smaller than you." "That little freak deserved what he got," one of Jake's friends interjected. Maya didn't recognize him, but his body language suggested he was used to backing up Jake's plays. Maya felt the familiar cold anger that had served her well in combat situations. During the war, that anger had helped her focus, had given her the edge needed to make split-second decisions that saved lives. Here, it was a liability. "Nobody deserves to be bullied," Maya said, standing slowly. Several other students had noticed the confrontation and were gathering to watch. Maya recognized the dynamic from her first day of combat training, the crowd feeding off the tension, waiting for violence. "You think you're tough because you got lucky this morning?" Jake's second friend spoke up, apparently deciding that numbers gave them an advantage. "There's 3 of us now." Maya almost smiled. 3 untrained teenagers against someone who'd fought Void Swarm shock troops in zero gravity. The odds weren't even close to fair, but not in the way they thought. "Walk away," Maya said, her voice carrying the same tone she'd used to address insubordinate soldiers. "This doesn't have to get worse." "Worse for who?" Jake demanded, reaching out to grab her shoulder. Maya's response was automatic. She caught his wrist, applied pressure to a specific nerve cluster, and Jake found himself on his knees again, his face pale with pain and shock. "How?" he gasped, staring up at her with something approaching fear. Maya realized she'd made another mistake. She was supposed to be de-escalating, not demonstrating advanced combat techniques to a growing audience of students. The circle of watchers had expanded, and several were recording with their phones. Before she could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Maya turned to see Mr. Peterson, the physics teacher, approaching with the no-nonsense expression of someone accustomed to dealing with teenage drama. Behind him walked Principal Morrison, Jake's father, whose face was already darkening as he took in the scene. Maya released Jake's wrist and stepped back, immediately shifting into damage control mode. The situation had just become exponentially more complicated. "No problem," Maya said quickly. "Just a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding, my ass," Principal Morrison growled, helping his son to his feet. "This is the second time today you've assaulted my boy." "Dad, it wasn't assault," Jake said, though his voice lacked conviction. She just what?" Principal Morrison demanded. "Used some kind of martial arts on you?" "Twice." Maya felt the weight of multiple problems converging. Principal Morrison had every right to be angry about someone repeatedly putting hands on his son. From his perspective, she was a violent new student who posed a threat to school safety. "Sir," Maya said, falling back on military courtesy protocols, "your son was attempting to physically intimidate other students. I intervened to prevent harm to a smaller student, and just now I defended myself when he approached me aggressively." "That's not what I saw," one of Jake's friends said quickly. "She attacked Jake for no reason." Mr. Peterson held up a hand for silence. "I saw the end of this interaction, and what I observed was Ms. Chun using minimal force to defend herself against an aggressive approach. However, this is the second incident today involving the same students, which suggests a pattern that needs to be addressed." "You're damn right it needs to be addressed," Principal Morrison snapped. "This girl has been here one day, and she's already causing problems. Where did she learn to fight like that?" Maya felt trapped between competing narratives. The truth would expose her background and compromise her integration mission. But lies would only create more problems when they inevitably unraveled. "I took self-defense classes," Maya said, sticking to her cover story. "I was taught to use minimal force to defend myself and others." "Self-defense classes don't teach you to drop a linebacker twice your size," Principal Morrison replied. "I want answers, and I want them now." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with an urgent message. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. "Emergency extraction available. Signal if needed." General Vance was monitoring the situation. If Maya couldn't resolve this quickly, her integration mission would be terminated and she'd be pulled back into military service. All her efforts to build a normal life would be wasted. "Principal Morrison," Maya said, making a decision that went against every tactical instinct she'd developed. "You're right to be concerned. I haven't been entirely honest about my background." Mr. Peterson raised an eyebrow, clearly interested in what she was about to reveal. "The truth is that I spent 2 years in a very intensive program that included advanced self-defense training. It was designed to build confidence and leadership skills, but It also taught me techniques that are probably inappropriate for a high school environment. It wasn't entirely a lie. The Galactic Defense Initiative had been designed to build those exact qualities, just not in the way Principal Morrison would imagine. What kind of program? He demanded. Maya took a deep breath. A military-style leadership academy. My parents thought it would help with discipline issues. I learned to defend myself and others, but I also learned that violence should always be a last resort. She looked directly at Jake, who was still rubbing his wrist. I apologize for using more force than necessary. I'm still adjusting to normal social situations. Where I was, the threats were different, and the responses had to be immediate and decisive. Jake stared at her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Military school explains a lot. You move like my cousin who's in the Marines. Leadership Academy, Maya corrected quickly, but she could see understanding dawning in several faces around her. Principal Morrison's expression softened slightly. Military Academy would explain the attitude and the skills, but it doesn't excuse putting hands on other students. You're absolutely right, Maya agreed. It won't happen again. I'm still learning how to fit in here. The environment is very different from what I'm used to. Mr. Peterson nodded approvingly. That's a mature response. However, I think all parties involved need to understand that physical confrontation is never acceptable on school grounds, regardless of the provocation. Understood, Maya said. Jake looked between his father and Maya, clearly processing the new information. So you're like, trained to fight? I'm trained to protect people, Maya said carefully. But I'm also trained to use words before force, and I should have done that better today. Jake, Principal Morrison said sternly, we're going to have a separate conversation about your behavior toward other students. Multiple witnesses have reported bullying incidents, and that stops now. Jake's face reddened, but he nodded reluctantly. The crowd of students began to disperse as the immediate drama ended. Maya gathered her books, hyper-aware that she was now 15 minutes late for her meeting with General Vance. Ms. Chun, Principal Morrison called as she started to leave. I'll need you in my office first thing tomorrow morning. We need to discuss appropriate behavioral expectations and possibly arrange some counseling to help you adjust. Yes, sir, Maya replied. As she walked toward the exit, Maya felt the weight of multiple failures pressing down on her. She'd compromised her cover, created an administrative problem, and possibly blown her integration mission. All because she couldn't ignore bullying when she saw it. The walk to the abandoned parking lot gave her time to consider her options. She could accept extraction and return to military service, where her skills were valued and her actions made sense. Or she could try to salvage her civilian integration, which would require navigating increasingly complex social and administrative challenges. She found General Vance waiting beside a nondescript sedan, his expression unreadable. He was a compact man in his 50s, with gray hair and the kind of alert posture that never fully relaxed. Maya had served under his command for 6 months on Europa, and she'd learned to read his moods from subtle cues. You're late, Lieutenant, he said without preamble. Sir, I encountered complications at school, Maya replied, falling automatically into military bearing. So I heard. Agent Rodriguez briefed me on this morning's incident, and our surveillance team observed the afternoon's developments. Your cover story shows quick thinking, but it's created new problems. Maya nodded. Yes, sir. I understand my performance has been inadequate. General Vance studied her for a moment. Actually, Lieutenant, your performance has been exactly what I expected, which is why I'm here. Maya felt confusion replacing resignation. Sir, your integration mission was never about hiding your capabilities, Lieutenant. It was about learning to apply them in a civilian context. The question was whether you could adapt your training to protect people without the structure of military command. I don't understand, sir. General Vance leaned against the car. Tell me, Lieutenant, what did you accomplish today? Maya considered the question. I neutralized a threat to civilian safety, sir. But I also compromised operational security and created administrative complications. You also prevented harm to a vulnerable individual, demonstrated tactical restraint under pressure, and found a way to de-escalate a situation that could have resulted in serious injury. Most importantly, you showed that your core values remain intact despite the challenging transition. Maya stared at her former commanding officer. Sir, are you saying the integration mission is proceeding successfully? I'm saying that integration doesn't mean becoming someone else, Lieutenant. It means learning to be yourself in a new environment. You'll always be a soldier. The question is whether you can be a soldier who protects and serves in peacetime. General Vance straightened. Your mission parameters are changing. Instead of hiding your background, you'll be building on the military academy cover story. We're arranging for documentation that supports your leadership training narrative. What about my oversight team? Agent Rodriguez will be reassigned. Your new oversight will be much more limited, focused on ensuring you don't reveal classified information rather than controlling your behavior. Maya felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. What are my new objectives, sir? Complete your education. Learn to navigate civilian authority structures. Protect people when they need protecting. And prepare for the possibility that Earth may need soldiers who understand both human and alien warfare. Sir, is there intelligence suggesting a new threat? General Vance was quiet for a moment. The Void Swarm was defeated, Lieutenant, but the galaxy is a large place. Earth's entry into galactic politics has made us enemies as well as allies. We need soldiers who can operate in both worlds. He handed her a small device that looked like a standard smartphone. Encrypted communication device. Weekly check-ins, emergency contact capability, and access to resources if you encounter problems beyond your ability to handle. Maya pocketed the device. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant. High school may prove more challenging than alien combat. Different rules, unclear objectives, and enemies who don't follow any tactical manual. As if to emphasize his point, Maya's personal phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. OMG, everyone's talking about the military school thing. Want to come over and tell me everything? Maya showed the message to General Vance, who actually smiled. See what I mean? Good luck, Lieutenant. I have a feeling you're going to need it. As the general drove away, Maya looked back toward Jefferson High School. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new social dynamics to navigate, and new opportunities to find her place in a world that was both simpler and more complex than anything she'd faced in space. She started walking home, already planning her strategy for the next day's battles. 3 weeks later, Maya Chun had become something she'd never expected, popular. It wasn't the kind of popularity she would have chosen. Students didn't flock to her because she was funny or charming or because she threw good parties. They came to her because word had spread that she was someone who solved problems. The girl from military school who didn't back down from bullies and who somehow always knew what to do in a crisis. Maya sat in the school counselor's office, across from Mrs. Patterson, a kind woman in her 40s who'd been trying to help Maya adjust since the Jake Morrison incidents. The official story about Military Leadership Academy had satisfied most questions, but it had also created new expectations. You seem to be settling in well, Mrs. Patterson said, reviewing her notes. Your grades are excellent. Your teachers report that you're engaged in class discussions, and several students have mentioned that you've been helpful to them. I'm doing my best to fit in, Maya replied. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. You seem to be fitting in almost too well. Several incidents have been reported where you've intervened in conflicts between students. While I appreciate your desire to help, I'm concerned that you're taking on too much responsibility. Maya had been expecting this conversation. In the past 3 weeks, she'd broken up 2 more bullying incidents, helped a freshman find a group of friends after he'd been socially ostracized, and somehow ended up mediating a dispute between rival cliques that had threatened to spill into actual violence. I was taught that leadership means helping others, Maya said carefully. That's commendable, but high school social dynamics are complex. Sometimes well-intentioned intervention can make situations worse. I'd hate to see you become overwhelmed or targeted because you're seen as someone who always gets involved. Before Maya could respond, there was a knock on the office door. Mrs. Patterson opened it to reveal David Kim, the boy Maya had helped on her first day. He looked nervous but determined. I'm sorry to interrupt, David said, but there's a situation in the parking lot that I think Maya should know about. Maya was already standing before Mrs. Patterson could respond. What kind of situation? Some guys from Westfield High are here. They're looking for you. Maya felt the familiar shift in her awareness that accompanied potential threats. Westfield was Jefferson's rival school, and any unscheduled appearance by their students suggested trouble. Mrs. Patterson frowned. Looking for Maya specifically? Why would students from another school want to talk to her? David looked uncomfortable. Word got around about what happened with Jake Morrison. Some people have been talking about it on social media. I guess it reached Westfield. Maya processed this information quickly. Her reputation had spread beyond Jefferson High, which meant her actions were having wider consequences than she'd anticipated. David, how many of them are there? Maya asked. 4, maybe 5. They're standing by a black truck in the far corner of the lot. Mrs. Patterson looked between Maya and David with growing concern. This sounds like a situation for school security, not students. With respect, Mrs. Patterson, Maya said, security response time will be at least 5 minutes. If these students are here looking for a confrontation, waiting could allow the situation to escalate. Maya was already calculating response scenarios. Unknown number of potential hostiles, unfamiliar with their capabilities or intentions, civilian environment with potential for collateral damage. The tactical assessment was straightforward, but the social and political implications were more complex. You're not going out there alone, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. Actually, I think she should, David said quietly. Both women looked at him in surprise. I mean, not alone. But Maya has this way of handling things. She talks to people differently than other students do. She makes them listen. Maya studied David's face. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd watched him transform from a scared target into someone who carried himself with growing confidence. He'd started sitting with her group at lunch, had joined the robotics club, and had even begun speaking up in classes. The change was remarkable. What did she do differently? Mrs. Patterson asked, genuinely curious. David thought for a moment. She treats everyone like they're capable of being better than they are. When she talks to bullies, she doesn't call them names or try to embarrass them. She just expects them to do the right thing. And somehow they usually do. Maya felt an unexpected warmth at the description. She'd never thought about her approach in those terms, but she recognized the truth in it. During her military service, she'd learned that most conflicts stemmed from fear, misunderstanding, or lack of clear direction. Treating people with respect while maintaining firm boundaries often defused situations before they escalated to violence. That's a valuable perspective, Mrs. Patterson said. But this situation involves students from another school. The dynamics are different. Maya's encrypted phone buzzed silently in her pocket. She ignored it for now, but the timing suggested that her oversight team was aware of the developing situation. Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate your concern, Maya said. But I'd like to at least go see what they want. David's right that I've had success de-escalating conflicts. And if the situation looks dangerous, I'll immediately come back for help. The counselor hesitated, clearly torn between protective instincts and recognition that Maya had demonstrated unusual maturity in handling difficult situations. 5 minutes, Mrs. Patterson finally said. If you're not back in 5 minutes, I'm calling security and the police. Maya nodded and started toward the door, then paused. David, stay here. If this goes wrong, I don't want you caught in the middle. But what if you need backup? Maya almost smiled. 3 weeks ago, David Kim had been too scared to walk down certain hallways. Now he was offering to back her up against unknown threats. I'll be fine, Maya said. But, thank you. Maya made her way through the school corridors, her mind shifting into tactical mode. The parking lot would be mostly empty during school hours, which limited potential civilian casualties, but also meant fewer witnesses if things went wrong. She'd need to assess intentions quickly and either de-escalate or control the situation before it could spread. As she pushed through the exit doors, Maya spotted the black truck immediately. 4 teenage boys were leaning against it, trying to project casual confidence, but failing to hide their nervousness. Maya recognized the type. Followers looking for a leader, probably coached by someone else to come here. She approached at a steady pace, not fast enough to seem aggressive, but not slow enough to appear hesitant. As she got closer, she could see that one of them was significantly larger than the others, probably their designated fighter. You Maya-chun, the largest boy called out when she was still 20 feet away. I am, Maya replied, stopping at what she judged to be optimal talking distance. Close enough for conversation, far enough to react if they made threatening moves. I'm Marcus Webb. I heard you think you're hot shit because you took down Jake Morrison. Maya studied Marcus Webb. He was taller and more muscular than Jake, with a kind of confident posture that suggested actual fighting experience rather than just bullying smaller students. I don't think I'm anything special, Maya said calmly. I helped someone who was being bullied. That's all. See, that's not the story I heard. Marcus continued, pushing off from the truck. I heard you embarrassed him with some kind of ninja moves. Made him look weak in front of his own school. Maya began to understand the dynamics. Jake Morrison's humiliation had spread through social media and rival school networks, creating a reputation that Marcus Webb wanted to challenge. It was a dominance display, not unlike territorial disputes she'd witnessed between alien species. Jake Morrison embarrassed himself by picking on smaller students, Maya said. I just stopped him from hurting someone. Yeah, well, Jake's my cousin, Marcus replied. And where I come from, family looks out for family. So I'm here to see if you're as tough as people say. One of Marcus's friends shifted position slightly, moving to Maya's left flank. Standard intimidation positioning, designed to make the target feel surrounded. Maya cataloged the movement without changing her own stance. I understand wanting to defend family, Maya said. But your cousin was in the wrong. If you want to help him, teach him to pick on people his own size instead of coming here to start new problems. You got a smart mouth for someone who's outnumbered, the boy on her left said. Maya finally let some of her combat experience show in her posture, subtle shifts that anyone with fighting background would recognize. Marcus caught the changes immediately, his eyes narrowing as he reassessed the situation. 4 against 1 does seem like poor odds, Maya said quietly. For you. The statement hung in the air for a moment, audacious enough to make Marcus's friends exchange uncertain glances. You're pretty confident for a little girl, Marcus said, but Maya could hear the doubt creeping into his voice. I'm confident because I know something you don't, Maya replied. What's that? Maya looked directly at Marcus, letting him see the absolute calm in her eyes. I know exactly how this ends if you make it a fight. You don't. It was a calculated risk. Maya was betting that Marcus was smart enough to recognize a serious threat when he saw one, and experienced enough to understand that overconfidence could be fatal in real combat. Marcus stared at her for several long seconds, clearly trying to gauge whether she was bluffing. Maya held his gaze steadily, drawing on 2 years of facing down alien warriors who could tear her apart without effort. You're military trained, Marcus said finally. It wasn't a question. Leadership Academy, Maya replied, sticking to her cover story. But, yes, I learned to handle myself. So did I. Marine Corps family, 3 generations. Maya nodded respectfully. Then, you know the first rule of combat tactics. Don't fight unless you have to, and when you do fight, make sure you win. Exactly. So let me ask you, Marcus, what do you win if you fight me here? What does your cousin win? Marcus considered the question while his friends watched nervously. Maya could see him working through the scenarios, probably realizing that even if he won a fight, it would create more problems than it solved. Jake wins some respect back, Marcus said, but without much conviction. Does he? Or does he look like someone who needs his cousin to fight his battles? How does that help his reputation? Maya took a small step closer, entering Marcus's personal space, but in a way that suggested confidence rather than aggression. You want to help your family? Go back to Westfield and tell everyone that Jake Morrison learned his lesson and changed his behavior. That he's become someone worth respecting instead of someone who hurts smaller kids. Make him live up to that story. Marcus's friends were beginning to look relieved, clearly hoping their leader would choose the face-saving option Maya was offering. And what if I want to see for myself how good you really are? Marcus asked. Maya smiled slightly. Then, you should join the boxing club at your school and work your way up to competing against trained fighters. Fighting an untrained opponent proves nothing except that you can beat someone weaker than you. The comment hit home. Marcus straightened, recognizing the implicit challenge to prove himself against worthy opponents rather than settling for easy victories. You're not what I expected, Marcus admitted. What did you expect? Some punk kid who got lucky. But you talk like my drill instructor. Maya saw an opportunity to build connection rather than just defuse conflict. Military families understand discipline and honor. We also understand that real strength comes from protecting people, not hurting them. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, my grandfather always said the best fight is the one you don't have to have. Smart man. There was a moment of silence as Marcus weighed his options. Maya could see him choosing between the easy path of violence and the harder path of walking away with dignity. All right, Marcus said finally. This is me walking away. But if Jake starts running his mouth about military school girl again, I might have to come back. Fair enough, Maya replied. But maybe next time, come to compete in something productive. I hear Westfield has a good debate team. Marcus actually grinned at that. You saying I should fight with words instead of fists? I'm saying there are lots of ways to prove you're better than someone. Fighting is usually the least creative. Marcus gestured to his friends, who seemed more than happy to head back to their truck. As they were climbing in, he called back to Maya. Hey, military school. You ever want to see how you stack up against real competition? Westfield's got a mixed martial arts club. Sanctioned matches, proper rules. Maya considered the offer. I might take you up on that. But not to settle scores. Just to see what I can learn. Respect, Marcus said, and Maya could tell he meant it. As the black truck pulled out of the parking lot, Maya felt her encrypted phone buzzing again. She pulled it out and saw a message from General Vance. Impressive de-escalation. Monitoring terminated. "You've got this, Lieutenant." Maya smiled and deleted the message. As she walked back toward the school building, she noticed a small crowd of Jefferson's students watching from the windows. Word would spread quickly that the military schoolgirl had faced down 4 Westfield students without throwing a punch. She found Mrs. Patterson waiting anxiously by the main entrance, with David Kim hovering nearby. "Well," Mrs. Patterson asked. "What happened?" "Misunderstanding," Maya said simply. "They were concerned about their friend. We talked it through. Everyone went home happy." David stared at her. "That's it? You just talked to them?" "Sometimes that's all it takes," Maya replied. "People usually want to do the right thing. They just need someone to help them figure out what that is." Mrs. Patterson looked skeptical, but relieved. "And you're sure this matter is resolved?" "I'm sure," Maya said. "In fact, I think it might have opened some new opportunities for positive interaction between our schools." As they walked back into the building, David shook his head in amazement. "You realize you're becoming like a legend around here, right? People are calling you the Peacemaker." Maya winced slightly. "I hope not. I'm just trying to help when I can." "That's exactly why they call you that," David said. "Most people our age either ignore problems or make them worse. You actually fix things." Maya thought about that as she made her way to her next class. 3 weeks ago, she'd been worried about fitting in, about hiding her capabilities, and becoming a normal teenager. Now she realized that had been the wrong goal entirely. She wasn't supposed to become someone else. She was supposed to become the best version of herself. As Maya took her seat in advanced chemistry, she reflected on how much had changed since her first day. She'd found her place at Jefferson High, not by hiding who she was, but by learning to apply her skills in a new context. She was still a soldier, but now she was a soldier who protected through leadership, de-escalation, and building bridges instead of through superior firepower. The teacher began discussing molecular bonds, and Maya found herself thinking about the bonds she'd built over the past few weeks. Friendships with students like David and Sarah. Respectful relationships with faculty who'd learned to trust her judgment. Even grudging acknowledgement from former enemies like Jake Morrison, who'd actually nodded to her in the hallway that morning. Maya had survived alien combat, diplomatic missions, and interstellar warfare. But she was beginning to think that successfully navigating high school might be her greatest achievement yet. Not because it was harder than war, but because the victory conditions were so much more complex. In war, you won by defeating the enemy. In high school, you won by turning enemies into allies, by building communities instead of destroying them, by protecting the vulnerable while helping the strong become better versions of themselves. As the final bell rang, and students began filing out for the day, Maya gathered her books and prepared for whatever new challenges tomorrow might bring. She had a feeling that her reputation as the peacemaker would bring new opportunities to make a difference. And for the first time since returning to Earth, Maya Chun was genuinely excited to find out what came next.